excited to kick off our first panel of the day, our keynote conversation with Ben Platt. I know, he's right there. He's listening to you. Our moderator for this conversation is an actor and a singer, and also happens to be Ben's best friend. In 2019, she earned a Golden Globe nomination for her role in Booksmart. She previously starred as Monica Lewinsky and was a producer on Ryan Murphy's critically acclaimed series, American Crime Story: Impeachment. She's appeared on Broadway, in Funny Girl, and in Bette Midler's Hello, Dolly. She's an outspoken writer and activist on topics like feminism, LGBTQ+ rights, and voter engagement. And recently, she just starred in Ethan Coen and Trisha Cook's movie Drive-Away Dolls. Please give it up for the incredible Beanie Feldstein!
Wow! Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hello. And hello to everybody watching online. I hear there's a live stream, so that's thrilling. So nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. I'm now going to read a very official thing about my best friend, which is kind of a funny thing to do. Our conversation today is particularly special as we delve into the vibrant world of Broadway and artist mastery. We are joined by an extraordinary talent and person, I might add, someone whose illustrious career on stage and screen encapsulates the essence of theatrical brilliance and artistic expression. Before we bring him to the stage, let me share a glimpse into his remarkable career, which I'm extremely proud of. Grammy, Tony, and Emmy winner, he recently graced the New York stage with his brilliant portrayal as Leo Frank in Parade, a performance that gained beautiful reviews and earned him a second Tony nomination. His versatility extends beyond the stage to the screen, where he captivated audiences in Theater Camp, a film which he co-wrote, produced, and starred in. An acclaimed recording artist, his multi-city Reverie tour sold out iconic venues like Madison Square Garden and the Hollywood Bowl. Excuse me while I turn my card. You may recognize him from his Tony-winning performance as Evan in Dear Evan Hansen, or his brilliant portrayal in The Politician on Netflix. His new album, Honey Mind, comes out this summer, and he currently has 2 singles out, and he will embark on a national tour beginning with an 18-date residency at the Palace Theater in New York City. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming the one and only Benny Platt.
Hey, what a nice intro.
Yeah. I read and I improvised, you know what I mean? It was a little of both. So we're very excited to be here today. As if you guys don't know, Ben and I met at a bat mitzvah, is actually the story. We went to separate middle schools, and we were at Allie Nadell's bat mitzvah.
Mm-hmm. Shout out Allie Nadell.
Shout out Allie Nadell if you're watching on the live stream. And we started talking about theater and all of our favorite shows, and we didn't go into her bat mitzvah is kind of the story.
Yeah, we stayed out in the cocktail hour chatting, so she's still upset. Sorry, Allie.
Yeah, sorry, Allie. And then we never saw each other again because we didn't have cell phones. Guys, we're old. We didn't have cell phones, and then Ben joined my school in 9th grade, and we were like, oh my God, you're the kid from the bat mitzvah. And we had the same lunch period, and we became best friends pretty much on the spot. And that was 17 years ago,
Hey.
which is crazy. And it has been exceptional for me as your best friend to watch you build this pretty incredible career that we're going to get to talk about today. So I'm really happy to be here with you all, and let's do it.
Thanks, Bean.
So most of them, I know you in other ways. Most of you guys probably saw Ben for the first time, whether it was in Pitch Perfect or The Book of Mormon on Broadway or Evan Hansen on Broadway. So most people know you for your singing and specifically like theatrical, Broadway, that type of thing. Can you talk about what led you to love Broadway and love musical theater and what it felt like to achieve those dreams?
Of course. We both love Broadway. I grew up in a family that was very much, showbiz family and loved musical theater, and I grew up with my dad playing show tunes to us in the car, and instead of the radio, we would listen to like Sondheim cast albums and Gypsy and Thoroughly Modern Millie, and I grew up doing like a youth program for musical theater along with my siblings, and you know, my whole family really loved it, and it was a great like shared language of something that we could really bond about. And I think for me, very quickly, it became clear that it ran quite deep in terms of like I can be a sort of an introverted person in a lot of different places. And have trouble sort of getting outside my mind and outside myself and connecting. And I think as a young person, when I would go and do musicals at like a youth program, Beanie grew up doing a youth program too, I think it was where I felt like the most free to be myself and like stretch my wings and be a little more outgoing and connect, and just it felt like the safest space. And so I just fell in love with it very quickly and stuck with it, and then started working professionally in theater when I was 9. I did a musical called The Music Man at the Hollywood Bowl when I was 9, which I was like screaming and crying, not wanting to audition for because I was very afraid. And then as soon as I walked into the room, I was like, oh, I like this. And sort of got bit by the bug immediately, and really just was pretty laser focused from that point until like our early 20s on just like that very particular dream of musical theater and getting the opportunity to originate a role, and you know, to get to do, as you said, Pitch Perfect and Book of Mormon, and that sort of leading me to the creative team of Dear Evan Hansen and getting to pursue that dream was a really wonderful and amazing journey that I didn't expect to happen quite so soon.
Beautiful. This is so funny because it's like I know all the answers, but you guys don't. You know, it's like maybe I should say them for one question, what you would say, and we'll see if it's right.
Exactly, like the Newlywed Game?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect.
We would kill the
We would kill the Newlywed Game.
So obviously you love musical theater. We worship at the altar of Sondheim and Gershwin and all of these people. And doing Evan Hansen, you recorded a cast album, which is part of why we're here today. And so you were used to being in the studio. I know, intimidating.
So large.
Sorry. You were used to being in the studio in that capacity. And can you talk to us like about, was there a moment that you remember where there kind of a switch went off of like, I have something else to say that's my own, that I want to create? And did participating in cast albums and things like that lead you to that, or was it something else? Or can you talk to us about that moment where you felt like I have something else to say?
Absolutely. I think it's like sort of a combo. Like in terms of like emotionally, doing Evan Hansen was very grating and very intense, and it's a character that is a really kind of all-encompassing sort of thing. And as the show was coming out, it became quite a sort of cultural thing, and I became very deeply associated with that person. And while I do feel lots of connection to Evan, we're both quite anxious and we don't have good posture and things like that. Like I am quite a different person than him, and I think as I got to the end of my run, having developed it for many years and been involved with the character for a long, long time, I was just feeling this this real need and desire to get back in touch with like my own perspective and to express my own personality and my own views. And I felt that I'd been prioritizing just kind of putting that on the side to really dive into this other person. So it sort of coincided, that moment, with working on the cast album, as you said, with Atlantic Records at the time. And they were the sort of the first ones to suggest, you know, what have you ever thought about doing something on your own, and would you want to start experimenting with songwriting and working with some co-writers and doing like a writing camp and seeing what that feels like? And I think that was like sort of exactly the right little push on the back at the right moment to try to just like see what it felt like to sing as myself, which is like a scary, different vibe, but has been a really beautiful channel of my career.
And also your music is so personal, as most singer-songwriters' music is, but I think for you, knowing you, I know how true and personal it is. And was it intimidating or kind of scary to not have that armor, as you said, of like another person that you're kind of hiding behind in a way? Like you're singing about Evan's journey or about Elder Cunningham's journey or whoever. You're not singing about your own life. What was it like to kind of sing your own story for the first time?
Definitely a frightening thing, I think, both in terms of just sharing yourself and putting yourself up for public display and critique without any protection of like, but I didn't write this, so like if you don't like it, it's not all me. But so it's like really putting yourself forward like that is a scary thing. And then I think on top of that, you know, both of us are actors, and we know that in this industry, like there's a lot of kind of emphasis put on like mystery and being like saving, like keeping yourself somewhat private so that people can imagine you in different characters. And like particularly as a queer person, you know, obviously if I'm going to share my experience in my songs and write about my relationships, there's going to be a lot of elements about that are about being queer, and that's just always been, you know, and there was never a moment where I was like, I'm gonna take a stand and talk about my queerness, because like to talk about love and relationships for me, that's to talk about queerness. So I think for me, I certainly felt a bit of a fear of like, if I express this and I'm, you know, as forthright about this as I want to be, like, is that going to jeopardize people being able to see me in all different kinds of roles? And will I be able to stay, you know, cool and mysterious if I'm, you know, sharing so openly what I feel and what I do? But the gratification of connecting with your own experiences and seeing people really take them on and use the songs in their lives, and just like that is so infinitely beyond those kinds of worries. I think, at least for me, the reward of that. So once I kind of jumped off the cliff, it was like, it was a feeling I got excited to keep doing.
And what was the first song where you felt like, oh, this is my music? Because I remember the first song that you played for me, I think, was Better. Yeah. And I remember being like, where did this, you've been doing this all along? Like, where did this come from? And being so moved and so proud and so excited. But was Better the first song for you, or was there another song?
That's so sweet that you remember that. I remember playing it for you.
I remember you were like hiding. Like, I was sitting on the other side of the piano and you weren't looking at me, and you were like, I just did this thing. And I was like, this is amazing.
I don't like watching people listen to my music. I hate it. But that was the first song I sort of wrote alone, like in its entirety. But I think the first one where I really like hit the nail stylistically on the head and felt like, oh, okay, like I understand more so like what my particular lane is, both in terms of content and sound, was a song called Ease My Mind that's on my first album that I wrote with Ben Abraham, who's an incredibly talented songwriter in his own right and singer. But it was about sort of my experience with anxiety and the ways that having a relationship or love in any capacity can really like ease that and help make get you out of your own head and make you feel like more grounded. And I felt like this sort of cross-section of like the way that it sounded and the type of thing I was singing about, sort of something clicked, and I was like, this is kind of my zone, I think.
And we're so lucky to hear it. Do you have any advice? This is, I think, a very important question specifically for this group. Do you have any advice for aspiring artists that are looking to transition between kind of a more Broadway theatrical space into recording studio work in their own right?
That's a great question. Also, I feel bad that I'm sort of like closed off. Hi, everybody. Yes, I mean, I think the first thing for me, or that I would hope is sort of like a hurdle that we can all sort of stop pretending exists, is that like there's this huge difference between singing in a theatrical space and singing your own music. I feel like at the end of the day, pop music or you know, any sort of genre, particularly when you're being your own artist, like it's all theater. Like there's a theatricality, there's a storytelling, there is, you know, even if it's coming from a more organic and sort of less like literally narrative place, I think it's so much more connected than we in the sort of modern space necessarily view it as. Like back in the day, the people singing on Broadway were at the top of the charts, and those were the pop songs. And so it's like, I think that the more and more that we're intertwining and, you know, seeing people like Renee rap and just like getting those lines blurred, I think makes it easier to begin with. But I would say for me, the biggest lesson was, you know, as a singer by trade, I'm very focused often on, you know, vocal quality and the way that my voice sounds in a given record and how am I showcasing my ability as a vocalist. And I think in theater, that's such a big component when it comes to like modern pop singing. But I think when I started to really focus more on the songwriting and the story that I was telling and letting that be the star and be out front and just trust that, you know, because it was my own story and my own perspective, like I will naturally sing it the way that I want to or the way that feels most organic to me. That's when things started to really click for me. So I think as much as is possible to sort of, you know, trust in the vocal ability or the technique or the sound or the individuality that you have and focus as much of your kind of active attention as possible on just how to translate that perspective rather than that literal sound. I think that's where I found some success.
Focus on what you are trying to say versus
Yes.
like how you're saying it.
Exactly.
In that way, I think.
It's exactly.
Okay, great. And I had one other thing to ask you. Oh, it was going to be that obviously we both know that like theater training is so rigorous and being on Broadway is so rigorous. Do you feel like that has really grounded you and helped you in your touring capabilities? Because I can't imagine what it would be like for someone to like tour for the first time without a background of doing that night after night. So do you feel like that was extremely helpful to you having that background?
100%. I always think about that same thing of like artists that are super like vocal forward, not having had experience doing 8 shows a week. Like how do you get yourself conditioned to tour and sing every other night? And I think definitely having the discipline of, that we both experienced of having to do it 8 times a week and wake up every morning and check your voice and warm up and eat a certain diet and hydrate a certain amount and take supplements and go to 12 ENTs and just always be in constant fear of your vocal health. Doesn't that sound fun? But I think definitely that crash course made it so that I knew how to get myself ready. Like, I'm about to do this Palace residency and go on tour, and whenever
we're gonna get there, Benny. We're gonna get there.
But anytime, I for a long time in my career, anytime I was about to get ready to start performing again, I would have a couple weeks of panic of it's been so long and I don't remember how to do this and my body forgets how to be in shape. And it's eventually you do cultivate a nice routine of, when you're a certain amount of time out, starting to weed back in some of the good, healthy routines and getting yourself back in shape. And so I think definitely sort of set me up to know how to go about it. But I'm not necessarily an artist that can tour, in terms of health, passively. I think there are some artists who are musicians or, there's different types of music where it's a lot more about just the energy that you're bringing or where you're at on that certain day. But because so much of what I do depends on singing, I think it's I definitely know anytime I'm touring, that's going to be a period of time where it's got to be the only focus.
Yeah. And to people that don't know you, do you want to talk through some of the things that have really grounded you in that ability? Because I feel like if from the outside, if you didn't know, it would be what do you do to keep yourself in that shape and ability to tour every night?
Totally. Well, I take lots of supplements. I take
Walk us
wellness
through the
formula. I take vitamin D. I take bromelain. I can make a whole list and I'll put it online. I drink one of those obnoxious water bottles that has you can do it, you're almost there, halfway through the day.
He does. He brings it to dinner.
I bring it around on tour. I bring it to the airport. My fiance Noah absolutely hates it and tries to throw it away whenever I leave it somewhere. But the number one and number two thing that are irreplaceable are water and sleep. There's no replacement for waking up without having gotten rest or for not being hydrated. Unfortunately, it's just you got to figure out how to sleep and you got to drink water. Diet things, which Bean and I both are very careful about our eating when it comes to our health and vocal, etc. But I think that, for me personally, no acid, no dairy, no gluten, things that create lots of mucus, just to get real about it, and just keeping your airways clean and clear. And then we both have worked in the past, and I continue to work with Liz Kaplan, who's an amazing voice teacher and kind of expert, who is very good at continuing to make sure that I understand that it's not, when you're prepping your voice, it's about prepping your whole body and making sure that your whole instrument is head to toe. It's not just what's in your throat and in your chest. So I think making sure that you're feeling connected and loose and sort of at one. Those are the main things.
Beautiful. So all of us are very excited that you have a third album coming out very soon. So I think we should talk a lot about that. Not even a little, just a lot.
Great.
So your new album sees you exploring a more understated kind of folk-leaning sound. What inspired this? I mean, I wouldn't say it's a huge shift. It's who you've always been. But what inspired you to kind of focus that in this third album, and how does it reflect your growth as an artist?
This is so funny. So I always have loved James Taylor, as we both know, and
And sang my first dance at my wedding, which was a James Taylor song. It's very beautiful.
That's true. I did. And thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so that whole kind of time period and sound and, Paul Simon and Simon and Garfunkel and Fleetwood Mac and Joni Mitchell and Carole King, just these very sort of Americana folk singer-songwriters that are very unadorned and super storytelling forward, not a lot of bells and whistles, I guess, would be one of the through lines of that. I think has always been a major source of inspiration, and I think as I started writing on this album and started doing initial sessions, I think it just really felt like a really nice stylistic match for where I was at, emotionally, and the types of things that I was writing about, which is a lot about Noah and my relationship and our love that we share, and also about just this kind of trapped between youth and adulthood thing, and still trying to figure out the balance of maturity, etc. Just very naturally, as we started to write, and I worked with a lot of co-writers who are in Nashville, who a lot of them exist very much in this stylistic space, just felt like the most natural sound for this kind of content. And then I got kind of doubly inspired as we started writing by the crossroads of that type of music and a queer perspective. I don't necessarily think there's been a ton of examples, at least for me growing up, of this type of introspective, sort of a little bit more soft-hearted type of music and romantic music from a very expressly lyrically queer perspective. And so I really got excited by that like juxtaposition.
Intersection too.
Intersection,
Yeah,
yes,
intersection. Was there a moment in the creation of the album where you felt like, oh, this is what it is? Like kind of what I was saying about your first ever time songwriting with your first music, but with this album specifically with Honey Mine, like was there a moment or was there a specific collaborator or a song where you were like, this is the album, this is what we're doing, let's keep going from here?
Yes, totally. I had a work session for a week with one of my favorite collaborators. Their name is Alex Hope. They're an amazing queer songwriter. We wrote Grow As We Go together on my other album, and we wrote I Want to Love You But I Don't together, which is for my second album. And I've just always loved them, and we've had great one-off song sessions through the years, but this was the first time that we kind of hunkered down and wrote for like an extended period of time. And they have 5 songs on the record that we wrote, just the two of us, and I think they're also queer, and they were as inspired as I was by that combo of like this sonic world and like very sort of classic like American images and sounds mixed with that queer perspective. And so when we started writing, we wrote All American Queen and Andrew, which was my first single. And both of those, I think once I started to hear what those were and like feel like this very specific combo was being realized, that's when I was like, I see where we're gonna build the rest out from. Like that was sort of the core at the middle of the apple.
Very exciting. As you prepare to share the rest of the Honey Mine album with us, what emotions or themes do you hope the audience takes away? I know you don't like people watching you play new music, but you are about to go on tour, so you're going to have to get over that.
It's okay if I'm singing it. It's more when you sit in a room and you play it and you're just like watching them like, what do you think?
I understand. The liveness of it makes it easier for you, which is such an interesting thing about you. You're so comfortable on stage in a way that has always been and always will be, and it's very beautiful. But is there something that when we're all listening to the album for the first time, whether it's at the Palace, on your tour, in our houses, in our ears, that you want people to take away from it? Other than, of course, that kind of juxtaposition of what you're saying, like is there a feeling or a energy or a commitment or something that you feel like you want us to take away?
You know, I never want to dictate like the experience because I often find that like people connect to it in ways that I don't ever premeditate or like expect, or like I think it's going to be one thing and it's always another. I would hope different people in different ways. Overall, I guess I want it to feel warm and cozy and kind, and it's definitely not like an aggressive or abrasive type of album. I think it's something that's hopefully a little bit soothing, and if people are in relationships or have partners, I think there'll be certain things that they'll certainly glean or maybe hopefully feel their experience reflected, or some of the things that they're thinking about and the growth that they're experiencing as a person having a partner that they'll experience. And even for people who don't, there's a lot of themes that I hope resonate in terms of like people who are still trying to find the things from their youth that they want to maintain, and the sort of wonderment and recklessness and levity that they don't want to let go of, but also wanting to step into like a more mature, responsible adulthood. But I think there's no wrong answer. I think as long as it feels either connective or makes you feel good, or
soothing is great. Soothing is such a beautiful thing. It's like
totally, we all need to be soothed, I think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what the album's about is how much Noah soothes your mind, which is where the title came from, which we should talk about. But if you can bring that feeling outwards through your music, that's really beautiful.
Thanks, man.
So talk to us about how you came up with the title.
So the album's called Honey Mind. I was on a hike with Noah, my fiance, and we had partaken in some chocolate. And we were walking in this really beautiful place called Mohonk Mountain that's upstate, and I was feeling very happy and very giddy, and because of Noah. And he was asking me to describe to him just like what's making you so happy. And also I'm, again, a pretty anxious person, and I spend a lot of time in my head, and he was noticing that I was really not succumbing to that and that I was feeling very present. And he was like, what is it? And I started to get very mushy and talk about my love for him and how happy that he makes me, and started to think about, you know, my brain and what the inside of my brain might look like, as one does when they're hiking and taking chocolate. And I started thinking about, like, you know, when things are stressful or anxiety provoking, or get in your way in some capacity. Like I just imagine all these kind of jagged things kind of jutting out in your mind and getting in each other's way and sort of making it a bit of a busy, kind of sharp environment. And I thought about how when you're in love or when you have someone that you feel like really, brings you into yourself, it doesn't make those things go away or like disappear or change their shape. It just like covers them in something a little bit sweeter and smoother and like coats the whole thing and makes it a little easier to take. And so I had this just image of something really sweet and golden kind of covering everything. And, Noah was like honey. And I said, yeah, exactly. You give me honey mind, essentially. And so I wrote a song called Honey Mind that I love, and that's going to be on the album. And then when it was time to pick the title, it just felt like it encapsulated kind of the whole energy.
So sweet. I love it.
Don't do drugs.
That's the lesson. That's what we came here to talk to you about today. Okay, so we have to talk about the Palace because you're about to do 18 shows at the Palace, end of May, beginning of June, and end of May or early June, some might say. You get it. And
the internet audience loved that.
you're welcome. So talk to us about going into that iconic venue and what we can expect or what your take on that venue is, because it's a pretty huge deal and a lot of life-changing iconic performers have performed there. And I want to know about, because I'm curious, because this part I don't actually know what to expect from that performance, but also given who else has performed there. I know in some of like the teasers you put out a clip of Judy Garland performing there. Has the history of the venue kind of impacted your take on it, and is there someone that you walk on the same stage of that you're thinking about when you walk out there?
Totally. Excellent question. I think that the list of people that have performed at the Palace is a really daunting, scary thing to read. And obviously, Judy Garland has been a love of mine for my whole life. I used to dress up like Dorothy a lot as a child, and I loved The Wizard of Oz.
You went to preschool as Dorothy for many months.
That's true. I had like a blue jumper that was gingham. Anyway, I've always loved her and really identified with her, and she's been an idol of mine. And so naturally, that's sort of the name that jumped out to me the most. So in terms of the actual set list, which I'll talk about, she's the one who is influencing it a little bit. But I think when I looked at the list, it's like Judy and Liza and Diana Ross and Bette Midler, who Beanie knows well, and Harry Belafonte, and just all of these incredible artists. But the thing that I think really unites them, as I was looking at it, is that they have nothing to do with each other. That like they're all so intensely individual and unique, and like that was the thing that allowed them to do something like this. And so I think the history of it has inspired me to just really focus and invest in like what is my version of this, and if I'm doing an evening of performing and singing, what do I want to sing and what do I want it to feel like, and not necessarily like what should it be or what is the perception of something going into this theater, but rather what will a Ben Platt show be that not like a Judy wouldn't be. No, I mean hopefully not too many things because I'd like it to be just like Judy, but. So yes, I think I certainly feel.
Not to just quote you back to yourself, but when you won your Tony Award, I was there that night in the audience, and the end. Yes, please, yes. And I remember just briefly looking around the room and thinking, "Wow, everyone's looking at Ben the way I've always looked at him," which is like a moment I'll treasure forever. But the end of your speech, you said the things that, I don't want to misquote it, the things that make you weird, strange, are the things that make you magical, wonderful, powerful. Okay, I was so close.
Same vibe.
But that's basically what you're saying. It's
Exactly.
like you have to lean into what makes you as Ben you, and you can't, no offense, you can't be Bette Midler. You can't be Judy Garland.
None of us can.
None of us can, not even close. So you have to lean into what you are doing with Honey Mind and all of your music and like really bring that forward.
Exactly, that's exactly it. And I think in terms of the set list, which I want to answer because you asked me what to expect and what the vibe is, it's certainly coinciding with the release of Honey Mind. So the kind of crux and center of the show is this new album and getting to sing it for the first time and share a good amount of it. But because it's like a bit of a larger kind of moment where I'm bringing together this world of theater with this like songwriting space, I'm certainly going to sing some stuff from my other records, a couple of musical theater covers, a couple of moments for Judy and Liza. So it'll be a nice little amalgam of all the things that have sort of led me to this point.
It's very exciting. It's an amazing thing.
It's cuckoo.
It's cuckoo. It's cuckoo from all sides. So quickly, Okay, I think actually it's time for audience questions.
Oh, great.
We didn't get, you talked a little bit about Alex and Natalie and your collaborators, but
Totally.
is there anything else I realize that I'm sort of
yes.
skipping that portion.
No, we got it in there very naturally.
Okay, beautiful.
But I would just add that Dave Cobb is an amazing executive producer who would produce the whole album, and I got to go and record it at his little compound in Savannah with his musicians, and really brilliant organic Americana guy who helped me keep the album as authentic and live sounding as possible. And he's, besides Alex, the most major consistent collaborator on the album.
And for people in the audience that might want to do more like what he does versus what you do, was there a moment something that he said to you, or a moment in the recording of it that sticks out to you that you want to tell us all about?
Yes, two things. He when I first got there, his house is set up so that it's sort of secretly a studio, in the sense that there's a really nice living room, and there happens to be a nice setup to record a guitar in there, and there's a pretty library, which is also kind of proofed as a drum room, and it makes you feel as though you can just be hanging and playing music, and it can get captured when it needs to be, as opposed to time to hunker down and do something that is business oriented. And I think that the casual nature of the environment he created helped the songs feel super natural and super just communicative. And then I think he is a big proponent of a hero live take. So almost every record on the album is one take played all the way through. And obviously we have modern technology, so we can go back in and fix individual notes. And if there was a guitar part that wants to be played over it, and you can zhuzh it. But I think I really feel the difference when the emphasis is on, let's figure out how we play this in this room as a band together and make music and have that be at the center. And